the whole universe breathes in and out. If that is true, it may well be, because it's as above, so below. They say the entire universe expands, maybe it does, and then comes together again into one. And then it happens again. And the heart does that. And the seasons do that. This season is a kind of out-breath. Fall, autumn. Nature is breathing, has come to the end of the out-breath. And sometimes even when you get warm days in autumn, they are maybe the same temperature almost as summer, it has a different energy quality to it. It is stiller. It's moving towards cessation. Nature has come to the end of the out-breath. Fall is the out-breath, and the end of the out-breath is the equivalent of death. And that's why the autumn days can be so peaceful. Sometimes you can even sense the stillness in the air. Nature is ready to rest. So everywhere you have the in and out breath. Each time you breathe out, it's a little death. And so you go into that death and realize when you reach the point of death, the end of the out breath, you haven't disappeared. It's the deepest peace there. So that, now to come to another question, these just happen to be a few that I remember. A few questions on how to bring awareness into the everyday world. Some people say, when I'm out in nature, it's wonderful. There's stillness. When I'm sitting here in the group, it's wonderful. Stillness arises. But the moment I go back into the city and my usual activities, it's gone. How to bring it into that? And of course, when you're in nature, your mind is not being stimulated because you're not surrounded by mind-made things. When you're in the city, everything around you is made by the human mind, and there is a collective energy field that is nervous mental activity. That's why cities are so noisy. The inner noise becomes externalized and then manifests as machines and amplifiers, producing so-called music. Very hard to find a restaurant these days where you are not bombarded with noise. And when you say, would you mind turning it down a little? I say, what's wrong with you? And then there's your workplace, probably dominated by nervous mental energy, like most workplaces are. Even places that could potentially be places of great peace and healing, they're very nervous. Hospitals are very nervous. Schools are very nervous. They're getting more and more nervous. School teacher, one of the most stressful of all jobs. Only 50 years ago, it was one of the most comfortable jobs. It was great. So bring in little returns to presence into the noise as you go about your activities. How to do that? Just little things. You can even make a list of 3, 4, 5 things that you can do each day, periodically, simply to bring some return to presence. You may put next to your computer a little card that says, "Can you feel your feet? Can you feel your hands?" Or you may put in the bathroom, if they let you in the office, take 2 or 3 conscious breaths. When the phone rings, don't jump to it. Let it ring twice and then answer it. And during that time, don't be in a state of, okay, I'm just holding back before I answer it. But no, give it, allow it to ring. It wants to ring, that's what it's doing. So you actually watch or listen to the ringing, you allow it, it goes, whatever sound it makes these days. And there you are, you look at the phone and you hear the sound. You've created a spaciousness inside. And that which drove you deeper and deeper into mind and into noise is reversed. Every time it rings, it becomes an instrument for some space, just a little bit of space to arise inside you. Oh. And nobody would even notice that it took 2 more rings before you answered it. If there are steps, you can walk up and down the steps consciously, instead of making each step a means to an end. In other words, you're already where you want to be mentally. You're being pulled by the next moment to the next thing. You take the opportunity to take 1 step at a time. You don't even have to slow down after a while. You can actually walk fast without being pulled to where you need to get, without being pulled away from this moment. That's extremely enjoyable. It doesn't mean now as presence, you bring presence into everyday life, that you necessarily have to slow down. At first, it may slow you down a little because it's an unusual way of doing things. But after a while, you realize that there's no need to slow down. If you actually, something needs to be done fast, you suddenly see your hands are moving fast. You're putting this here, packing your suitcase to get to the airport, you're running late, and yet suddenly there's only each movement and looking what it is that needs to be put in without even noise, because there's only the looking now. There's an opening of a drawer, you see. This is right action that comes out of presence. You don't think, okay, what do I need? You can actually look and it happens. And then you walk fast and you enjoy the energy of that. And then you shut it and then you run down the stairs, still without being pulled. Because if you're pulled away from the now into the future, that is the mental projection. So the mind projects itself there and says, I need to be there. And then you're being pulled out of yourself. And it's called stress. And so you know but they also speak of stress in metal, which stress means there's one pull this way and one pull that way, and eventually it breaks if there's too much stress in metal. So humans live in continuous stress in this mad world, and stress is a form of fear. I need to be there. So you bring in first into little things presence. There's the phone. You could have a flower next to your computer screen. There's a flower. Always make sure there's a flower there. And something natural, because everything else, if you're in an office, is mind-made. There's a flower there, and periodically you look at it. Truly look, just half a minute. The mind will tell you that you cannot spare 30 seconds to look at the flower. You just don't have the time. This cannot be true. Everybody has 30 seconds occasionally. If you can enter the body easily, feel that in your place of work, a great opportunity. If you can do that, it's the most wonderful transformation. Whenever somebody speaks to you, on the phone or in person, while you listen to that person, feel the aliveness in the inner body. And now, what is speaking to you is the human mind. It will try to get you entangled in what it's saying. But here now you are rooted here. You listen from there. And can you function in that way? Yes. Can you still reply intelligently, or are you just going to make unintelligible sounds? No, you may be surprised that intelligible words come out of your mouth if you need to reply. They may be more intelligent than you would have said otherwise. Anytime there's a meeting, dreadful things, meetings, committee meetings, conference tables, everybody has their agenda, everybody has their power positions, everybody's fighting everybody else, or two temporarily get together to fight those other two, and all that madness. Around the table, if there's only one human being who is in the body, is often enough to change the entire energy field of the meeting. Even if it isn't, even if it doesn't do that, it gives you a degree of peace while you sit there. You will probably speak less, but when you speak, it is more likely that people will listen, because at last somebody is saying something new and meaningful. It does not come from ego. So in that sense, this healing is taking place through you, through not the personal you, but through this form. Healing is happening. So you're not doing it just for yourself, because if one person becomes transformed in that way and brings in a different vibrational energy field, then things will change around them, if they are capable of change. Some structures are so heavy, old mind-made human structures, certain organizations. Some may be too heavy, they will just have to crumble eventually, and they will, sooner or later, probably sooner. Many other structures are still capable of change, because there are humans in there. They're basically all mind structures. If you need to escape from the office, go to the bathroom, shut yourself in there, and sit there for 2 minutes. Not complaining about the mad world, but perhaps being aware of your breathing. And this is another little one that you can introduce anywhere, being aware, watching the breath as you go up and down the elevator. Wonderful. Who says that you cannot watch your breath when you're in the elevator? If that is at your workplace. And you will yourself will come up with little things on how to introduce spaces into that which seems to make it impossible to have space, those surroundings. And yet it's not impossible. I will dip my hand in the basket now. Take a few. There was a big one here. Maybe that's it works. Another big one got blown away by the wind. Sometimes it doesn't. When I let go of my story, I feel less alive. What is the value of going to a place where I feel less alive? It is true. Better than to be dead is to have a dramatic story. Better than not feel any aliveness is to have some drama, something interesting going on in your life. And so you see, often in relationships, the partners feel if they are not going through their periodic drama, they don't have a relationship anymore. It feels the aliveness is going out of it. But the story is a secondary kind of aliveness. The drama that people get involved in, yes, it's a way of feeling some life in the absence of feeling something much deeper and more genuine. But you have to step out of the story temporarily to find that. And a good starting place is going into the body, not just for a minute, but make it into a daily practice for a while, and go deeply within and sense the enormous amount of vibrant life that is already there in the body. Bring attention to your sense perceptions and notice the enormous power of your conscious attention. So it's a question of leaving your habitual world where you felt at home and entering something new. And at first the new you may not recognize. It happens also when people first encounter some stillness, and it's such a strange place that they feel they want to run back to the mental noise, and they say, well, I encountered some stillness, but it felt completely empty, and I don't see why I should go there. I compare these people to someone who just spent 4 hours in a noisy discotheque and then steps out, and the heavy doors close behind, and you're out in the countryside with only very subtle noises of the night going on and a breeze. But at first you step out, you hear nothing. It will feel dreadful, that silence, because you're so used to that noise. So you might even in fear run back into the discotheque. At least that's familiar. You have to stay for a while with the stillness, because the power of that is more subtle. It's more powerful, but also much more, it has a different density to it than the density of the mind, a different frequency. So you become attuned to that frequency. So you stay in the emptiness for a while, and then realize the emptiness is also fullness. Now, the desire to step out of your story only comes really when the story becomes too unpleasant to want to dwell in it. So it may be that some people have to wait a little bit longer until their story turns into something that they don't want to be in anymore. And eventually that will happen. There is greater aliveness, true aliveness, outside of the story. What determines the intensity of a person's wish to be in the present moment? What one could perceive as the wish to be in the present moment is the arising of presence in you. In that sense, there's nothing you can do about it. When the wish appears, presence is already arising. It's not separate from it. But can you make it arise? No. So what determines whether or not presence is arising in you? We could say grace, evolution, how much you've suffered. Maybe they're all the same. But in any case, it is not something that you can want to happen. And you wouldn't. You wouldn't even want to be present if presence were not arising. You wouldn't even ask the question how to be more present. So it is arising. The wish to be present is the arising of presence. It's ultimately not personal. And yet, from a personal perspective, where language comes from and where we have to speak from a lot of the time, we can say that you can help the arising of presence, being receptive to it. But it's all really something that the universe is doing through you. When you think you are doing it, and it's great to believe that I can choose to be present, I can choose not to answer this phone and let it ring twice. That's what it looks like. But how is it possible for you to even do that? If there were not enough presence, you couldn't do it, nor would you want to do it. You would say, what is the point in waiting? I mean, it's ringing, answer it. And maybe that's what your boss will say when he sees what you're not answering. Ultimately, it's not you, because you are not separate from the totality of the universe. It just seems that way. But it's good to feel that you can choose. Ultimately, the universe is choosing to be present through you. Nobody else can choose. Well, there's an interesting question. Maybe it's connected with this. You've given us many portals to the stillness within, but I find that in day-to-day life my mind is in 100% control and does not want to be free of itself. How do we become aware when we don't want to? When you don't want to, you don't want to. But there is something hidden in the question, which to me signifies that something in you does want to. Otherwise you would neither be sitting here nor be asking that question. You'll be watching TV somewhere. I get discouraged when I think, well, Eckhart didn't awaken through the practice of presence. He awakened through a sudden act of grace that completely erased his mind's habit of resisting the present moment, and so did many other teachers I know of. Presence was the result of your awakening, but it wasn't the method. Are you sure? Ordinary people... Are you sure ordinary people can dissolve their ego through the practice of presence when that's not how you did it? I worry that I'm trying to break down the boulder of my ego with a pocket knife when what I really need is a stick of dynamite. Sometimes it happens with a pocket knife, but this isn't a pocket knife. This here is a sword.